Hello, everybody. My name is Heather. I'm a book coach, an editor, an author, and the founder of The Creative Authorpreneur. And today I would like to talk to you a little bit about how to open a book synopsis. So, as we know, synopses are always sort of the least favorite of all of the things we have to send an agent. Last time I talked about all of the do's and don'ts, sort of the big picture basics of a synopsis. But today I really wanted to dive in and give an example of how to open a synopsis so that people have an idea of how to put all of that advice into action. Alrighty, so first off, I want to remind everyone of a couple of the points that I made last time about the big picture things that we should be doing in the very beginning of the synopsis. So the first bit of advice that I gave everybody was start with the protagonist, meaning tell the agent who the protagonist is, really get them to invest in this person and take sort of a deep dive into that person so we get things like their motivation and all of that. But there was a caveat there. I said start with the protagonist or maybe with the world. And sometimes you might need to do that if, for instance, you're writing a speculative fiction book that has a whole lot of world building, and without that world building pretty close to the beginning, nothing really makes sense. So I'm going to, a little bit later, when I give you an example of how to start a synopsis, I'm going to show you two ways. One where we start with the protagonist only, and one where we start with the world only, to give you an idea of how that can work. Okay, so that's the first thing that we need to, some advice that we need to implement. The second bit of advice I gave you last time that I need to implement when I'm doing this is to give context. Don't just tell me your character's first name or last name. Tell me about where they are in time and space, who they are, what's currently happening in the protagonist's life, why today, like what is so special about today, why does the story start now? And that's actually usually intricately related to the inciting incident. Okay, the next bit of advice that we have to have when we're writing the synopsis is, what does the protagonist want? We have to answer this question. So as I said last time, the protagonist has to want something. They have to have a goal. If there's no goal, if they don't want anything, then we don't have any kind of a yardstick where we can measure the story, where we can see what's going to happen, because it's the want of the protagonist that sets up the story goal and that sets up the story question. Will the protagonist get what they want? And usually that's sort of the first question that we have. Will they get what they want? But then that opens up other questions like, okay, but if they get what they want, will it feel like they thought it would feel? Or is it going to be exactly like we think, or is there going to be a twist? So it kind of sets up those initial story questions. And it hooks your reader, it hooks your agent to say, ooh, that's interesting. All right, the next thing we have to sort of know, we have to have a hint maybe of what your protagonist believes, the lie that your protagonist believes. And watch my other video for a more in-depth description of this, but the lie the protagonist believes is usually something that was true at one point in their life, but now it's hindering them in moving through their character arc. And to get through that character arc, they have to overcome the lie, and whether or not they get what they want, they're going to overcome this lie or this belief about the world that they are facing. And it will change them. They will arrive at the end as a different person than they were in the beginning, even if maybe they do the entire story in just one room. Another thing that we have to think about when we're opening the synopsis is, what is standing in the protagonist's way of getting what they want? So we know that they want something, we know that they believe some kind of a lie about the world, but why haven't they just gone out and gotten what they want? Usually in a good story, there are two reasons why they haven't gotten what they want, and one of those is very external. There is some external problem that's preventing them from getting what they want. It's a physical barrier of sorts. The other obstacle is going to be something internal, and it's typically related to the lie that they believe. Okay, so, and that's going to be the real story. Even if they can overcome all the external obstacles, there's something in them that is holding them back from fully getting what they want, or from, fully completing that character arc. Okay, so I'm going to, as in my last video, I'm going to use the Hunger Games as an example, and I do this because I love speculative fiction, and also because the Hunger Games is a story that most of us have either seen or read, or maybe both, so we're kind of familiar with the story. And being speculative fiction, it allows me to show you how you can start a synopsis with the character or with the world. Okay, so here is just some information that I put together, as thinking of imagining this was my own story, imagining that for a moment I am Suzanne Collins, and I'm putting all of this together to think about how in the world I'm going to write the synopsis. So first I'm giving context about the world. I'm just kind of brainstorming here. I'm saying, okay, Katniss Everdeen lives in District 12 of Pan Am with her mother and sister. She's very poor and food is a big issue. She's the sole caretaker of her family and is very gruff. So these are just this is context, and I'm getting this in my head. Certainly not everything in here is going to go into the synopsis, but it's helping me think about the things that do give context to the world. Okay, the lie that she believes. Katniss probably believes a lot of lies, but I think the one that is most centrally related to this story is that she believes people are completely untrustworthy, and that the only way she will survive is by facing and overcoming every situation alone. That's her big lie. That's the thing. So it was kind of true, right? It was kind of true in the story. For a while, her mother had a mental breakdown after the death of her father. So, and her mother effectively abandoned the family in Katniss's eyes. And so Katniss went from this very trusting person, maybe, we kind of think that she probably was, to a person who was like, oh, I can't even trust my father to come home, and I can't even trust my mother to take care of us. And she and her sister almost starved. So there's a lot of mistrust there, a lot of I have to do everything myself or we're going to die type of mentality with her. So that is her lie. So what does she want? Well, she wants to protect her family. I think that's the big thing in this story, the thing that sets everything else into motion. This later transitions into the very tangible, she wants to survive the Hunger Games, but that actually comes back to, why does she want to survive the Hunger Games? Well, I mean, yes, obviously she wants to live, but the real reason that it means so much to her is that she wants to survive to protect her family. So if she dies, she can't come back to her little sister and keep her alive and well fed. Okay, so what's standing in Katniss's way? Externally, there are a lot of obstacles to protecting her family. The government, first of all, and in general, the government makes living very, very difficult for the citizens of the districts. And very specifically, on the day the story opens, the reaping is standing in the way of her protecting her family. Okay? So those are external things. Now, internally, the lie is standing in her way because once, she doesn't trust a lot of people. She trusts her little sister and she trusts Gale, and these are the only people that she sort of allows inside and she allows herself to depend on. But even so, she kind of keeps Gale at a distance. She doesn't fully rely on him. The only person I think she fully trusts, even though she doesn't rely on her, is her sister. So, later, though, this lie is going to get in her way as she tries to survive the Hunger Games. First, she doesn't want to trust Haymitch or Effie, two people who are certainly flawed, these characters, but innately they're both kind of good and they are trying to help her, but she doesn't trust them. She doesn't want to give the audience very much of herself. She doesn't want to trust anyone. She doesn't want to open up and get people to like her. Again, these are all trust issues. And we see this, and of course she doesn't even want to trust Peeta, who is arguably the most selfless character in the entire book, but she sees almost everything he does as somehow being selfish. Like, she doesn't see it for what it really is because of her deep mistrust. So that is definitely standing in her way of succeeding. Even when Peeta is trying to help her in every way he can at his own expense, like, hey, you can win the games and I'm okay to lose them, she still doesn't really trust that. Okay, So the next thing that I have to think about when I'm opening a synopsis is what happens in the story. And again, I'm just talking about the opening of the synopsis here, not the entire synopsis. So I'm thinking about what's the inciting incident, because that's the context, that's the why today. So that's what I'm going to put in the opening. And of course, the first point here is, what happens in the story, the events. Well, Katniss and Gale meet before the reaping. That's completely unimportant. It happens, but it's not important enough to be in a synopsis. It's an event, not a pillar moment. However, the inciting event at the reaping, Primrose is chosen as a contestant in the Hunger Games, and Katniss has to volunteer as tribute. That's the inciting incident. So of course I have to wrap that in there somehow. Okay, so let's look at one. This is my my synopsis opening option number one. So in this one, I start with the world. I just give context, and what I want you to notice is, yeah, we could mess around with words here. I could definitely get rid of some words and change some others. This is a really rough draft of just trying to get the basic things in here. I could mess around with this for hours and make it a lot cleaner. But let's just look at what I have here. So I'm starting with the world, and notice that I could say a whole lot about Panem, but I keep it to 3 sentences, no more, because I don't want to overwhelm. First of all, I don't have enough room to go on and on about Panem if I'm going to talk about the other parts of the story at all. But also, I don't want to overwhelm the agent with just facts about the world. I want to give context into the world my character is in, okay? So I don't want to overwhelm them with cognitive overload about this world. So I say, the totalitarian society of Panem rose out of the ruins of the once great nations of North America. Panem is divided into 12 tightly controlled districts, all serving the lavish capital. Each year, the districts are required to select one boy and one girl between the ages of 12 and 18 to compete in the Hunger Games, a televised fight to the death where there can be only one winner. Now, I chose this because I really want to describe the kind of world we have, and the reason why I put in there the ages is so that we get an idea of our main character's age, and I might even be able to, I talk about her age later, but really giving it a context that it's children fighting in these games. And then here, I say in a televised fight to the death where there can be only one winner, because that sets up the twist at the end that I'm going to have to talk about in the synopsis, that for a while, Peeta and Katniss get to be on the same team because they've revised the rules of the Hunger Game. But then at the end, they make a twist and they change the rules back, trying to pit them against each other. So without this here, there would be no context into how all of that works. Okay, so after that, so I started with a little bit of world building, and now I transition into my character, my protagonist. After the death of her father in a mining explosion, 16-year-old Katniss Everdeen, and notice how I give her age here, and I put her name all in caps, has been the sole person standing between her family and starvation. I put a little bit in there. I don't say, Katniss wants blah, blah, blah. I'm not that direct with it. But if she's the only person standing in the way, it's like this is clear that she's been fighting for this. Maybe this is what she wants, okay? On the morning of the reaping, Katniss is plagued with worries that she will be selected to compete in the Hunger Games and forced to abandon her family. So I set up the stakes. She's worried. Notice how I don't just give a list of facts. I say how she's feeling here, because we want to know that. We want to know that Katniss is going into this with a lot of reservation. She's worried about herself at first, right? She's thinking, oh, I have a chance of being chosen here. I don't go into all of the details of why she thinks she's likely to be chosen. That's the details for the book. I don't have enough room here. But I do say that she's worried about it. And I say why. She doesn't want to abandon her family, meaning that's what she wants. She wants to protect them. Okay. But when Katniss's beloved little sister Prim is chosen to compete in the Hunger Games instead, a panicked Katniss does the unthinkable. She volunteers as tribute, taking her sister's place in the deadly competition. Okay, and again here, I try to infuse meaning. Okay, a panicked Katniss does the unthinkable. Okay, so I think something like worries, panicked, unthinkable, trying to to give meaning to this world and this character, but she volunteers as tribute, and we know why. Because, she doesn't want to abandon her family, and she doesn't want that, because that told us that she's worried about them. Okay? She doesn't want anything to happen to them. So even though this means she's going to abandon them, it's better than letting her sister die. Okay, so that was one option. And again, there could definitely be tweaking of the wording here. Maybe I don't want to say totalitarian society. Maybe I just want to say Pan Am rose out of the ruins of the once great nations of North America, right? There are a lot of words that I might be able to tighten this up. I might be able to make it better. But this is a good skeleton. All right, so let's go on to the next one. But what I want you to notice is I use a lot of the same words. I just kind of shift them around a little bit. And also notice that because this is speculative fiction, I still have to put the context of the world in there. Otherwise, it doesn't make any sense at all. Because if I didn't, we'd think Katniss was living in our world, like our modern day world, and we'd be like, what? What's going on here? Okay, so let's look at the next one. All right, so now I've switched it, and I kind of start with the character, then I go into the world, then I go back to the character. Okay, 16-year-old Katniss Everdeen lives in District 12 of Pan Am, a totalitarian nation built in the ruins of North America. Pan Am forces all of its districts to serve the lavish capital, and each year these districts are required to select one boy and one girl between the ages of 12 and 18 to compete in the Hunger Games, a televised fight to the death where there can be only one winner. After the death of Katniss's father in a mining explosion, she has been the sole force standing between her family and starvation. On the morning of the reaping, Katniss is plagued with worries that she'll be selected to compete in the Hunger Games and forced to abandon her family. But when Katniss's beloved little sister Prim is chosen to compete in the Hunger Games instead, a panicked Katniss does the unthinkable. She volunteers as tribute, taking her sister's place in the deadly competition. So again, I just give a little bit about who she is. She's a girl living in a totalitarian society. Then I tell you a little about her world. Then I come back to who she is. Because, and I use all of those charged words again. I say things like worried, plagued with worries, beloved, panicked, unthinkable. These things that inspire emotion and context and meaning for the reader, so that we know something about what all of this means to Katniss and why she's going to do what she's going to do. All right. So I hope that was helpful in just seeing how it is that we can set this whole thing up. So if you enjoyed this video, please go ahead and like and subscribe to my channel, and let me know if you'd like to see my version of the rest of the synopsis. I'd be glad to do the rest if anyone's interested in hearing about that. And if you're interested in knowing a little bit more about me, go to thecreativeauthorpreneur.com. All right, storytellers, I'll see you later. Bye-bye.